Tucked in between the ocean and the rolling hills and valleys around Carlsbad, California, are the growing fields and greenhouses of one of Earth's most beautiful industries. Commercially grown plant and flowers, greens and blooms destined for markets around the globe. In years past, acre upon acre of ranunculus, gladiolas, and poinsettias were clearly visible from local freeways. Today, most plants and flowers are grown under plastic, yet enough remain visible to make the coastal part of North County a destination point for tourists from around the world. What they find is a charming blend of land use. Agricultural plots abloom next to tracts of homes, schools, and businesses that bolster the economy of Southern California. A multi-million-dollar industry has made San Diego the leading plant and flower producing county in the nation. One of its most respected leaders is Evelyn Widener.
And I grew up in what you call a mama and papa nursery, where mama and papa and the kids do all the work because you're too small to have any hired help. And I got married and married into the greenhouse business, and we eventually moved our greenhouses down here, sold them, and retired. So what you see here is what is a retirement project that got a little bit out of hand. After we retired, we did what all retired people do, played around and traveled, and then my husband, Bob, who died about 4 years ago, he said he'd like to build just 4 greenhouses over here on this piece of land, enough to pay the property taxes and get him out of my hair. And I said, fine, as long as you don't get any bigger. He said, I promise, not get any bigger. And then one day, about a year later, he came in one afternoon and he said, Evelyn, how would you like to have a nice big patch of tuberous begonias? That's this kind of flower here, and I'd had a love affair with these ever since I was a teenager. We were finally down here where it's cold and coastal, cool and coastal and wonderful climate. So of course I said, fine. I was thinking of 50 for the backyard. And he said, good. I just ordered 25,000. And he said, I want it to be a flower show. Tuberous begonias grow beautifully here. Southern California people shouldn't have to go all the way to Santa Cruz to see something that beautiful. Tuberous begonias grow easily anywhere along the coast where it's cool. And that's one of the reasons we have so many greenhouses down here. We have beautiful sunshine, but it's not too hot and it's not too cold. And just perfect growing weather. The field, the part I'm sitting in here, is filled with what we call non-stop tuberous begonias. Non-stop tuberous begonias got started about 10 years ago. They're a new brand from, or a new hybrid from Germany. And they're different from this kind because the flowers are smaller. There's more flowers, but they bloom earlier and they bloom later. But the big difference is they're easier to grow and they're more heat tolerant.
Widener and 250 other area growers are represented by Bruce Hall, General Manager of wholesaler chrysanthemum and potted plant grower Robert Hall Incorporated in Encinitas, and President of the San Diego County Flower and Plant Association.
We represent flower growers, potted plant growers, wholesalers, shippers, and retailers in the San Diego County. We provide a lot of civic events and social events and educational programs.
As successful as they are, many growers constantly strive to generate new varieties. In the 1920s, Paul Ecke turned the original Mexican poinsettia into a source of worldwide acclaim it is today. Paul Ecke Jr. and his team carry on that breeding tradition, developing new colors and forms to add to their brilliant collection of familiar holiday showpieces. The Eckes have 3 goals: to breed, to provide cuttings as mother plants to other growers throughout the world, and to produce a flowering crop each November and December for the retail and garden market throughout the Southwest.
This particular greenhouse that we're in at the moment is one that's dedicated to breeding and developing new poinsettia varieties for the commercial floral industry. We're very, very pleased with this plant. It's called Ecke's Point Freedom. It'll be introduced in 1992 as a new red variety. We've worked on this particular plant for more than 8 years, and we think that it's going to be adding something that's going to be very important for the consumer in addition to being a better plant for the grower to grow. The main thing about this variety is that it has this beautiful dark red bracts with the dark green foliage. And this contrast seems to be a very appealing color combination to the folks that buy poinsettias, which turns out are mostly women. And they've told us over and over and over again that this is the color combination that they like. This is a new seedling that we've been working with for several years now. It isn't quite ready for distribution, but it certainly is an unusual presentation. You can see that it has pink and this red flecks on the edge of the bracts. We've never had one like this before. Of course, it's going to be designated as a novelty and will only be important to a certain limited number of people, but we feel that our job is to create new varieties in addition to new forms of poinsettias, because there's always someone who's looking for something just a little bit different, and we believe that this is going to fill the bill for that person that wants something not quite so traditional, but certainly with the traditional plant for the holiday season, the poinsettia. This is also a poinsettia. It's a little hard to believe that this is a poinsettia, but it is something that we've been working on for almost 24 years. It looks a little bit like a dahlia, but as you can see, it has foliage just like poinsettias. And we're getting pretty close to when we'll be able to introduce this plant. We do believe that it, again, will have a limited market for those people that want something a little different, but at least it's in the traditional red color. Today in the U.S. market, about 70% of the colors produced are red, shades of red, and about 30% are the pinks and marbles and white and various combinations of pink, white, and red. So this, and we don't have a name for it yet, we call it a curly. Everyone who in the industry who's seen it feels that this is going to be a good plant for the market a little bit later. All we have to do is to improve a few of the features that we know are necessary to make it a commercial variety, and then we'll introduce it to the American public. We get to see the results of all of our breeding efforts this past year. And the breeding business is one of the 3 types of activities that we're involved with. First, we want to develop the very best varieties so that we'll have something that is good for the consumer and then also good for the producer. Our primary concern is the consumer. We're looking for plants that will be prettier, both in bract color and foliage, but also that will last longer for the consumer. So often the consumers don't give the plants the best care, and they don't last as long as they should. So we're trying to build into the new varieties longer lasting qualities. So if breeding is our first business, then our second business is providing cuttings to other growers throughout the world. Most of our customers are in North America. We supply them with cuttings in the spring, which they use as mother plants to produce more cuttings. And then we produce cuttings in the summertime that are just flowered as they are when we send them in July and August and September. Then we come to the third business, and that is producing the flowering crop for the November and December market. We grow plants that are utilized in Southern California, Arizona, and New Mexico. The rest of the country is taken care of by the people who we supply the cuttings to. They produce then in the local market in Seattle or Des Moines or Miami. The market today is still about 70% red, and there we have a number of shades of red, but red is the dominant color.
However, a sense of obligation isn't the only reason growers are developing new breeds or, in some cases, changing crops.
Most of the product that we grow is sold within Southern California but we also ship back into the Midwest and to the Pacific Northwest, places in Arizona, Texas, in that area, but all predominantly west of the Mississippi. Most of our eastern market has been lost to foreign competition over the past few years. Flowers coming from Colombia, predominantly. Currently, Colombia holds over 70% of the chrysanthemum market within the United States. And so that's been a lot of competition for us. A number of the other countries are starting to produce more chrysanthemums also. So this is going to be a crop that we're going to be slowly going out of to some degree and producing a little bit less in the future and growing some different crops to replace it. Some of the crops that we're working on right now to replace it are crops that normally are grown in the fields, and we're going to be trying to force them off-season so that we're not competing with other companies. So there again, in order to produce those crops, we're going to have to go to the use of utilities in terms of water, gas, electricity for lights and heating so that we can produce them off-cycle so that we're not competing with a foreign country. This is our chrysanthemum crop, and it's the largest crop that we produce here on the ranch. Approximately almost 3 million cuttings per year. And the section that we're at right now, we keep in production all year long as our base of production. And then we've got a couple other sections that we produce predominantly for holiday crops. It takes approximately 12 to 13 weeks, depending on the time of year, to produce one crop. We have to force them to grow on a year-round basis. Naturally, they only bloom in the fall, but with the use of lights and black plastic and the heating that we have in here, we can create crops on a year-round basis. They have to be maintained at a 60-degree night temperature minimum, or else the colors change and they get a little retarded on the growth.
Controlling plant growth is an enormous factor in raising commercial flowers. Growers regulate the flowering process by controlling plant exposure to light.
This is what we call our mother stock production. And from this area, we take small cuttings, approximately this size, and they'll go into a propagation house with bottom heat where we root them. Take approximately 2 weeks to root them. And then from there, we go into the nursery, and this is what will come from this will develop our cut flower production. Each one of these little cuttings will become a stem of flowers, and each bunch will have approximately 6 stems. Out of this area, we buy these cuttings from another company that specializes in the production of plants so that we can keep our stock clean. And we'll have to rotate this stock every 22 to 24 weeks. It always has to be lit so that the plants know that they're not supposed to produce a flower. As long as we keep them lit, it won't start the bud development. And the bud development, we won't let that occur until we get into the greenhouses, and we turn the lights out in the greenhouses once it's attained enough height so that we can have the proper length for a commercial cut flower.
American farmers have been blamed for using too much of the nation's water. Yet in California, it was the growers who recognized the need for water conservation. Early on, they began reducing their usage through use of drip irrigation and computer-based watering systems. Research continues within the industry on additional ways to recapture and reuse water.
In this industry, water is very, very important to us. Plants are living, growing things, and as you know, in this state, water is in a very precarious situation in some years, and other years where it's very prevalent. During the last year, we had a water problem in the state, and so additional methods had to be utilized in the state, in this industry, to conserve water. Ironically, Southern California, especially San Diego County, where water is very, very expensive, we have been very, very stingy on our use of water previously. And in the county of San Diego, 20% of the water is used by agriculture and 80% is used by homes and other industry. There were systems that we used that we were able to cut our water use in this industry 30% easily. I have some areas that I was able to cut my water use 50%. Some of them were very, very simple methods, putting timers on irrigation systems, so that it was not left to the memory of the person turning the valve, opening the valve, and closing the valve. Other systems that we use, we put saucers under plants, and this would catch the water and give it a chance to go back up, feed back up into the pot, and so that the water was not wasted running through the pot. Another system is we have mats that we put the plants on and that put the water on, and the mat holds the moisture and it feeds the water up into the pots. There are other those were all fairly inexpensive modifications that we had to make. There are some very expensive modifications that still can be made yet above that. There are benches that recycle the water. You water the plants, it runs into troughs and then back into storage areas, and then it is recycled back to the plants to be utilized again.
But the use of chemical insecticides is just as exacting as water conservation. Growers know that the very chemicals required to keep plants and flowers disease-free also have the potential of harming people and the environment. For that reason, California growers have instituted extensive pesticide rules and regulations.
If I could, I'd like to talk a little about pesticides in the industry. Since the book was written, The Silent Spring by Rachel Carlson, there has been very heavy publicity and concern about pesticide use in agriculture. And I would have to confess that that concern was well-founded. However, I would also like to update that in agriculture, and in this industry especially, that there has been many, many, many modifications that have been adapted by agriculture. These have made the pesticide problem in agriculture very minimal compared to such things as smoking, other things that commonly happen at home. We have to have a special permit to use Clorox in the nursery. It is not authorized for us to use Clorox unless we apply for this special permit. We have to have 100% registration of all the materials that we use at any time. Many of them we have to phone the agriculture department or fax them to notify them that we are going to be applying pesticides. The records are sent to Sacramento and are kept on file so that there is a record of all the pesticides that are applied in this industry throughout California.
Here at Widener's, we basically use the one-dry chemicals simply because we would like our plants to be dry when the retailers come in to buy our plants. We don't want to expose them to anything that is possibly hazardous to them. And so we take this extra precaution and use chemicals that are dry when enter. We do that very early in the morning, like we start spraying at 6 o'clock. This way, at the time retail opens, the plants would have been dry by then and the consumer would be protected that way.
With personnel and the environment protected, workers safely propagate and grow new plants.
In recent times, the indoor houseplant business has become quite international. Here we have a case where these cuttings were cut this week in Central America and were flown up here, and we are planting them.
Yet, in a competitive industry, it takes more than experience and hard work to stay the leader. It takes ingenuity. At Tom Turner Greenhouses, Tom maintains his edge in producing lilies through innovative machinery based on a process used in the Netherlands.
We produce about 30,000 lilies a week, and on a year-round basis, we plant 12 months out of the year. And this is the process that we found that works the best for us, is to take 10 stems, set them at a certain length on this machine that my brother Ted Turner built, and it goes through this machine, it holds onto the stems, it cuts them off with a saw blade, then it has rubber fingers that clean all the foliage off. And instead of having to grab each one of them by hand and cleaning them off, it eliminates the leaves. And then at the end, we have a person that'll pick them up and tie them with a machine and then put a sleeve on them. We buy the tulip bulbs from Holland through bulb brokers, and we start planting in late October, the 1st of November, and we start picking the first week in January. We pick here in Encinitas from January 1st till around the 15th or 20th of March. And the reason of the short growing season is that tulips like cool weather, and our weather starts to get so warm in March that the ground temperatures don't let the bulbs produce good roots. It takes approximately 6 to 8 weeks to grow them. The question was asked, do we use other bulbs, use the bulbs more than once? And we don't. You can, the machine itself grinds the bulb up and it cuts it off at the base. And even if we could take the bulb and clean it up again, it has a lot of disease in it. So what we do is we just take it and we throw it in the dumpster.
This is where many commercially grown flowers in Southern California end up, in Carlsbad's San Diego County Flower and Plant Auction. Hours before dawn, workers at the San Diego County Flower and Plant Auction swing into motion. The auction is based on the Dutch reverse-style process in which the bidding begins at the highest price rather than the lowest. An electronic bidding system expedites the process. While buyers make their bids, auction employees are already filling their orders.
The Flower and Plant Auction is a farmers cooperative owned and operated by 50 local flower growers in San Diego County, operating on a non-profit basis. The idea being the growers would come together, work mutually, and then could more efficiently sell their flowers and not have to have their own marketing operations. And it's worked out very well and has now been in business for over 8 years. What's going on now is, as flowers come out of the auction gallery, they're now coming out into the sales room. And in the sales room, we're setting up the orders for each of the individual customers. When they buy on the auction, which is a computerized selling system, we get a printout that shows how the flowers are then distributed. And then the employees here take the individual carts of flowers and then take the carts around the room and distribute them to the customers. Each customer, when they buy on the auction, is assigned a seat number, and we then hang a corresponding number out here in the sales floor. As the customers are buying, we are at the same time setting up their orders. So if someone on the auction is, say, seat number 29, they know that their order is under block number 29, and we're accumulating their order as they buy. So at any point in time during the auction, they can get up and come out and see what they've already purchased this morning, and they don't have to wait for their order to be completed. It's a very fast, very efficient process. The customers buying on the auction are retail florists, most of them from San Diego County, but quite a few that travel down from Orange County and the Los Angeles area. What this market has done, there's never been a single flower market for San Diego County like there is in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and most large metropolitan areas in the United States. So now with this market, that has happened, so it's very worthwhile for a florist, even from Los Angeles, to travel to North San Diego County to purchase their flowers. Everything is locally grown, so it's extremely fresh.
For customers farther away, flowers and greens are boxed and taken by truck to area airports, where they are placed aboard planes bound for other parts of the nation and world. While most growers are not open to the public except during special tours, retailers welcome browsers and buyers alike.
Everybody in the nursery business has a different way of selling their plants, and there aren't any best ways or good ways or bad ways. They're just your way. A big wholesale nursery greenhouse company will sell to supermarkets and to chain stores and to big nurseries. And then you get to a little place like ours where we sell just to the public, or we just sell to regular nurseries. Over the years, because it's been a retirement project and because Bob was so much wanted it to be a flower show, we've gotten to have sort of a special way that a special relationship with our customers, really, where we feel they're special and they feel that this is a special place where they can come. I guess probably our aim with our relationship with customers is that when that customer comes in for the first time, they not only go home buying the right plant or just enjoying looking and not buying anything, but they feel that they have a real sort of personal feeling that they've gotten to know Evelyn and Peggy or Mary or anybody that's working here, and that when they come back, it's sort of like coming back home down on the farm again. And it's fun. We like to keep it fun. We have fun introducing new plants, and go home at the end of the day tired but happy.
This has been merely a glimpse into a portion of San Diego County's agricultural industry. To learn more about growing blooms and plants, book a seasonal flower tour through the Encinitas Chamber of Commerce.